Shadow Rig. Chapter 1, The Midnight Pickup. The clock on the dashboard read 11:47 p.m. Its dim orange glow the only light in the cab of Nate Sullivan's Peterbilt. The Texas Panhandle stretched out around him, flat and endless, the kind of place where the horizon swallowed everything. Nate, a 45-year-old trucker with a graying ponytail and a scar across his knuckles from a bar fight in Lubbock, was used to long hauls. He'd been driving since he was 22, hauling everything from grain to gas tanks across the country. Tonight, he was on a run from Amarillo to Oklahoma City, a last-minute job that promised a fat paycheck. His boss, Mitch, had called him just as he was finishing a burger at a Greasy Spoon. "Nate, I got a priority load," Mitch said, his voice tight. "Pick up a trailer in Childress. Drop it in OKC by morning. Pays double, but you gotta move now." Nate didn't like rush jobs, especially ones that came with Mitch's nervous tone, but double pay was hard to turn down. His alimony payments were piling up, and his ex wasn't exactly patient. "What's the load?" he'd asked. "Supplies," Mitch said, vague as hell. "Sealed trailer, client strict. Don't open it, don't stop. Just drive." Nate grunted, figuring it was some shady deal. Maybe medical gear or something the client didn't want traced. He'd hauled worse. He agreed, got the pickup details, and hit the road. Highway 287 was a straight shot through the Panhandle, empty at this hour. The stars were bright. No clouds, but the air had a bite, like winter was creeping in early. Nate kept the radio off, letting the rumble of the engine fill the silence. The trailer was waiting for him at a warehouse just outside Childress, a rundown place with a sagging roof and no sign. A guy in a hooded jacket handed him the manifest, barely looking up. "Don't mess with the lock," the guy muttered, then vanished into the shadows. Nate hooked up the trailer, a plain white box with no markings, the kind that blended in with every other rig on the road. The padlock was heavy, military grade, and the trailer felt oddly light for supplies. He shrugged it off and climbed into the cab, the engine roaring to life. He was 30 miles out of Childress when he heard it. A low, grinding noise from the trailer, like metal scraping on bone. He glanced at the side mirror, but the trailer was just a dark shape in the starlight. The noise came again, sharper, like something was dragging itself across the trailer's floor. Nate's hands tightened on the wheel. He'd hauled enough loads to know when something wasn't right. This wasn't a loose pallet or a busted strap. This was deliberate. He turned on the CB, hoping to catch another driver, but all he got was static, thick and buzzing like a swarm of bees. He switched channels, and a voice cut through, low and rough, like it was coming from a throat full of dust. "Nate," it said, his name clear and cold. He froze, the mic shaking in his hand. "Who's this?" he barked. No answer, just static, and then another scrape from the trailer, long and slow. Chapter 2, The Empty Lot. Nate pulled over at a rest stop 50 miles from Childress, the gravel crunching under his tires. The lot was empty, just a couple of picnic tables and a busted vending machine under a flickering sodium light. He grabbed his flashlight and a wrench from the toolbox, ignoring Mitch's warning. He wasn't driving another mile with that noise. The trailer loomed behind the cab, its white walls dull in the dark. The scraping had stopped, but the air was heavy, like it was pressing down on him. He checked the padlock. Still locked, no sign of tampering. He tapped it with the wrench, the metal clanging softly. Nothing happened. He pressed his ear to the trailer door, holding his breath. A faint hum came from inside, low and steady, like a machine but not quite. It sounded alive. "Nate," the voice whispered, not from the CB but from the trailer itself, like it was coming through the metal. He stumbled back, the flashlight beam darting across the trailer. The hum grew louder, and now he heard something else. A faint tapping, like fingers on glass, slow and rhythmic. He backed toward the cab, his heart pounding. The rest stop was silent, no wind, no crickets, just that tapping, getting faster. He climbed into the cab and locked the doors, the wrench still in his hand. The engine roared as he pulled back onto the highway, the trailer dragging behind him. The scraping started again, louder, like something was clawing at the walls. The CB crackled, the voice back, clearer now. "You shouldn't have stopped, Nate," it said, almost amused. "It knows you're here." Nate yanked the CB's cord from the dash, but the voice didn't stop. It was in the cab now, low and close, like someone was breathing down his neck. He swerved, nearly hitting the guardrail. The scraping turned into a thud, heavy and deliberate, like footsteps pacing the trailer's length. He pushed the truck to 70, the engine straining, but the thudding kept pace, relentless. The road signs were off. He passed a marker for Quanah, 15 miles, but he'd passed Quanah an hour ago. He checked his map, his phone was dead, no signal, no GPS. The highway looked the same, flat and endless, but the mile markers were repeating like he was stuck in a loop. The thudding grew louder, and now there was a new sound, a low guttural moan, like something in pain but not human. Chapter 3, The Phantom Truck. Around 2 a.m., Nate saw headlights in his side mirror, faint at first, then closer, too close. Another truck, big and black, no markings, no plates, riding his tail. He flashed his lights, signaling for it to back off, but it stayed glued to his bumper, its grille filling the mirror. He sped up to 80, but the black truck kept pace, its headlights blinding when he glanced back. The CB crackled, even though it was unplugged. "You can't outrun it, Nate," the voice said, laughing now, a dry, rasping sound. The black truck honked, a deep, guttural blast that shook the cab. Nate's hands shook as he gripped the wheel. He floored the gas, pushing the Peterbilt to its limit, but the black truck stayed with him, its engine roaring like a beast. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone. No headlights, no sound, just the empty road behind him. Nate's heart pounded, his breath coming in short gasps. The thudding in the trailer was faster now, like whatever was inside was excited. The moaning grew louder, and now he heard words in it. His name over and over, mixed with sounds he couldn't understand. He saw a truck stop ahead, its neon sign flickering fuel and food. He pulled in, his tires kicking up gravel. The lot was empty except for a single rig, an old Kenworth with rusted fenders and no driver in sight. The diner was open, but the lights were dim, the windows streaked with grime. Nate grabbed his wrench and ran inside, shouting for help. A lone cook stood behind the counter, flipping a burger that smelled burnt. "Something's wrong with my trailer," Nate said, his voice shaking. "There's something in it." The cook didn't look up, just kept flipping the burger. "You shouldn't have taken that load," he said, his voice flat. Nate's stomach dropped. "What do you know about it?" The cook turned, and his face was wrong, pale, almost gray, with eyes too big for his head, like they didn't belong. "It's awake now," he said, pointing at the window. Nate spun around. The trailer was darker than the night, its doors open, swinging slightly. Something moved inside, a shadow that was too tall, too thin. He ran for the door, but when he reached the lot, the Kenworth was gone, and the diner's lights were off, the windows boarded up like it had been abandoned for years. Chapter 4. The Thing in the Trailer. Nate approached the trailer, wrench in hand, his pulse hammering in his ears. The moaning was louder, mixed with a scraping sound, like claws on metal. He shone his flashlight inside. The trailer was empty, but the walls were covered in scratches, deep and jagged, like something had been clawing at them for hours. At the far end, the shadow was there, tall, thin, its head twisted at an unnatural angle, its eyes glowing like dying coals. He slammed the doors shut and ran to the cab. The engine sputtered, like something was draining the power. He floored it, the truck lurching forward, but the moaning followed, now coming from under the cab, like whatever was in the trailer had crawled beneath the truck. He swerved, trying to shake it, but the sound stayed with him, louder, closer. The CB crackled. "You can't hide, Nate," the voice said, mocking now. "It's part of you." The moaning turned into words. His name, his sister's name, his father's name, people he hadn't seen in years. The voice knew things it shouldn't, things he'd never told anyone. He screamed, his voice raw, as the trailer shook violently, like something was throwing itself against the walls. The road signs were gone, the highway a black tunnel with no end. The black truck was back, its headlights filling the mirrors, its grille inches from his bumper. Nate pushed the Peterbilt to 85, the engine screaming, but the black truck stayed with him, its horn blasting like a scream. Then it vanished again, leaving only darkness behind. Chapter 5, The Motel Trap. Nate saw a motel ahead, its sign flickering vacancy. He pulled in, his hands shaking so badly he could barely park. The trailer was silent, but the air felt heavy, like it was waiting for something. The motel was small, just a row of rooms and a tiny office. The clerk, a woman with stringy hair and a blank stare, handed him a key. "Room 8, she said, not looking up. He asked if she'd seen a black truck on the highway. She just shook her head. "Don't go near that trailer," she said. "Some things don't like being seen." Nate didn't sleep. He sat on the bed, wrench across his lap, staring at the window. The trailer was parked outside, under a flickering streetlight, but the light didn't touch it. It was like the trailer was a void, swallowing the glow. Around 3 a.m., he heard the moaning again, right outside the window. He pulled the curtain back. The trailer doors were open, and the thing was standing there, its glowing eyes fixed on him, its head twitching. He didn't scream. He just watched as it raised a long, bony arm and pointed at him. The window cracked, a jagged line spreading across the glass. Nate grabbed his keys and ran to the truck, not looking back. He drove, the trailer shaking so hard it felt like it might break apart. The moaning was everywhere now, in the cab, in his head, chanting his name. Chapter 6, The Final Run. The highway was a nightmare, the black truck appearing and vanishing, its headlights blinding, its horn a scream in the dark. The figures were back, lining the road, their glowing eyes watching, their arms reaching. The CB was a chorus of voices, screaming, whispering, laughing. "You took it, Nate," they said. "You let it out." He didn't know what they meant, but the words cut deep, like they were pulling something out of him. The glow of Oklahoma City appeared through the darkness, a faint promise of safety. Nate pushed the truck to 90, the engine screaming, the trailer rocking like it was alive. The figures were everywhere, their arms clawing at the cab. The moaning was a roar, and the trailer felt like it was dragging 1,000 tons. He reached the warehouse just before dawn, his hands trembling so badly he could barely park. The trailer was silent, the doors still shut. The warehouse manager, a bald guy with a clipboard, didn't ask questions. "Leave it and go," he said, his voice clipped. Nate unhitched the trailer and drove away, the Peterbilt feeling light without the load. He never called Mitch again. He never took another job. The voices didn't stop, though. Every night, in his apartment, he heard the moaning, faint but there. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those eyes, glowing in the dark. Months later, he heard a story from another trucker. The trailer was still in that warehouse, untouched, unopened. Workers said it hummed at night, and sometimes the doors moved on their own. Nate sold his truck, burned the manifest, and moved to a new state. But he still checks his mirrors, even in his car, waiting for those eyes to appear. And sometimes, in the quiet, he hears his name, whispered in the dark. The Long Haul Home. Chapter 1, The Last Job. The dashboard clock glowed 2:13 a.m., casting a faint green light over the cab of Tom Carver's rig. The highway stretched out like a black snake, winding through the empty plains of Nebraska. No cars, no lights, just the hum of his Kenworth's engine and the occasional flicker of a mile marker. Tom, a 42-year-old trucker with a scruffy beard and tired eyes, sipped cold coffee from a thermos. He'd been driving for 18 hours straight, hauling a load of machine parts from Denver to Chicago. One last job before a week off. He could almost taste the beer waiting at home. This run was a favor for his boss, Ray, who'd called him at the last minute. "Easy money, Tom," Ray had said, his voice crackly over the phone. "Just pick up the trailer in North Platte and drop it in Chicago. No stops, no questions." Tom didn't like the sound of that. Ray was a cheapskate who cut corners, but the pay was double and Tom's rent was due. So here he was, alone on Route 80, the trailer rattling behind him. Something about this job felt wrong, though. Ray had been cagey, dodging questions about the load. The trailer was sealed with a heavy padlock, and the manifest just said, industrial equipment. Tom had hauled enough weird cargo to know when something was off. The trailer was too light for machine parts, and every so often, he heard a faint scrape from the back, like metal dragging on metal. He told himself it was just the load shifting. Trailers made noises, but deep down he wasn't so sure. The CB radio hissed, spitting static. Tom turned it down, but not before catching a snatch of a voice. Low, garbled, like someone muttering underwater. He frowned and switched it off. The radio hadn't worked right since a lightning storm fried it last summer. He didn't need distractions tonight. The fog was creeping in, thick and gray, swallowing the road ahead. His headlights barely cut through it, and the world felt smaller, like the cab was the only thing left. Another scrape came from the trailer, louder this time. Tom's grip tightened on the wheel. He glanced at the side mirror, but the fog was too dense to see the trailer clearly. Just a vague shape swaying slightly. He turned the heat up, trying to shake the chill crawling up his spine. Get it together, he muttered to himself. He'd been on the road too long. 18 hours was enough to make anyone jumpy. But then it came again. Not a scrape, a thump. Heavy, deliberate, like something big had slammed against the trailer's wall. Tom's heart skipped. He eased off the gas, letting the truck slow to 40. The thump came again, then another, rhythmic like footsteps. He pulled over onto the shoulder, the gravel crunching under the tires. The engine idled, loud in the sudden quiet. He sat there, listening, his breath shallow. Nothing, just the fog pressing against the windows. He grabbed his flashlight and a tire iron from under the seat. Ray's warning echoed in his head. Don't open the trailer, Tom. Just drive. But he wasn't driving another mile with that noise. He stepped out, the cold biting through his flannel jacket. The fog was so thick he could barely see 10 feet. The trailer loomed behind the cab, a dark shape in the haze. He walked along its side, the flashlight beam shaking slightly in his hand. The thumping had stopped, but now there was a new sound. A low hum, almost like a voice, too faint to make out. At the trailer's rear, he checked the padlock. It was still locked, the metal cold and slick with dew. He tapped it with the tire iron, half expecting something to happen. Nothing did. He pressed his ear to the trailer door, holding his breath. The hum was clearer now, rising and falling like a chant. It wasn't mechanical. It was alive. Who's there? He called, his voice hoarse. The hum stopped. Silence, heavy and wrong, settled over him. Then, a single sharp bang from inside the trailer, so loud it rattled the doors. Tom stumbled back, the tire iron slipping from his hand. He scrambled to pick it up, his flashlight beam darting wildly. The fog seemed to move, curling like fingers around the trailer. He ran back to the cab, his boots slipping on the wet gravel. He locked the doors and floored the gas, the truck lurching forward. The thumping started again, faster now, like a hammer pounding the trailer's walls. Tom's eyes flicked to the mirrors, but the fog was too thick. He couldn't see the trailer, but he could hear it. Bang, bang, bang. Relentless, like something was trying to get out. Chapter 2, The Voice in the Static. Tom pushed the truck to 70, the engine roaring. The thumping kept pace, a steady beat that made his head throb. He tried to focus on the road, but the fog was like a wall, forcing him to slow down. The CB crackled to life even though he'd turned it off. Static poured out, then a voice. Low, raspy, like it was coming from a throat full of gravel. Tom, it said, just his name clear as day. He yanked the CB's power cord from the dash, but the voice kept going. You shouldn't have stopped, Tom. His blood ran cold. The voice wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was in the cab all around him, like it was whispering in his ear. He swerved, nearly clipping a guardrail. Who's there? He shouted, his voice cracking. No answer, just more static, and then, faintly, that hum again, the same one he'd heard at the trailer. He grabbed his phone to call Ray, but the screen was dead. Not low battery, dead, like it had been fried. The thumping grew louder, and now there was another sound. Scratching, like nails on metal, coming from the trailer's roof. Tom's eyes shot to the ceiling of the cab, half expecting something to break through. The scratching moved, circling above him, then stopped directly over his seat. He slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding to a stop. The scratching stopped too. He sat there, heart pounding, staring at the ceiling. The fog outside was thicker now, pressing against the windows like it was alive. He couldn't see the road anymore, just a gray void. The CB crackled again. "Open it," the voice said. "Let it out." Tom's hands shook as he gripped the wheel. He wasn't opening anything. He hit the gas again, desperate to find a town, a truck stop, anything. A sign appeared through the fog. Rest area, 5 miles. If he could make it there, he'd be safe. People, lights, maybe a cop. The thumping slowed, but the scratching started again. Faster, like whatever was in the trailer was clawing its way out. The rest area's lights glowed faintly ahead, a beacon in the fog. Tom pulled in, tires screeching, and parked under the brightest floodlight. A few other trucks were there, their drivers probably sleeping in their cabs. He stumbled out, shouting for help. A grizzled old trucker named Hank, wearing a faded baseball cap, climbed out of his rig, rubbing his eyes. "What's the problem, buddy?" he asked. Tom pointed at the trailer, his voice shaking. "Something's in there. It's not cargo. It's alive." Hank raised an eyebrow but followed him to the trailer. The thumping had stopped, and the scratching was gone. Hank shone his flashlight on the padlock, then gave Tom a skeptical look. "You sure you ain't just tired? Long hauls mess with your head." "Listen to me," Tom snapped. "I heard it. Banging, scratching, a voice on the CB." Hank sighed but agreed to check. Tom grabbed his bolt cutters and snapped the padlock. The trailer doors creaked open, and a wave of cold air hit them, smelling of rust and something sour, like spoiled meat. The flashlight beam swept the interior. It was empty. No machine parts, no crates, just a bare metal floor, scratched and dented like something had been clawing at it. Hank shook his head. "Ain't nothing here, man. You need sleep." But Tom saw something Hank didn't. A faint outline on the trailer's back wall, like a shadow burned into the metal. It was tall, thin, with long arms and a head that didn't look right. He blinked, and it was gone. Hank was already walking back to his truck, muttering about newbies losing it. Tom didn't sleep. He sat in the cab, doors locked, tire iron in his lap, watching the trailer in the mirror. The fog didn't lift, and the rest area felt like it was cut off from the world. Around 4 a.m., the CB crackled again. "You saw it," the voice whispered. "You know it's real." Tom didn't touch the radio. He just stared at the trailer, waiting for dawn. Chapter 3, The Road That Never Ends. When the first light of morning broke through the fog, Tom felt a flicker of relief. The trailer was quiet, and the rest area looked normal in the gray dawn. Hank and the other truckers were gone, probably back on the road. Tom checked the trailer again, hoping it was all in his head. The doors were the ghost load. Chapter 1, The Late Night Call. The neon glow of the truck stop diner flickered against the midnight sky, casting long shadows over the cracked asphalt of the parking lot in rural Nevada. Ellie Harper, a 38-year-old trucker with a buzz cut and a faded tattoo of a hawk on her forearm, sat in her Mack truck's cab, nursing a thermos of black coffee. She'd been driving for 12 years, crisscrossing the country with everything from lumber to livestock. Tonight, she was parked at a rundown stop off Highway 50, waiting for a new job after dropping off a load of auto parts in Reno. Her phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with a call from her dispatcher. "Carla." Ellie answered, her voice rough from too many cigarettes and long hours. "Yeah, what's up?" Carla's voice was tense, not her usual laid-back drawl. "Got a rush job, Ellie. Pays triple, but it's gotta be done tonight. Pick up a trailer in Tonopah, Drop it in Salt Lake by dawn. You in? Ellie hesitated. Triple pay was unheard of, especially for a short haul like that. Tonopah was only a couple hours away, and Salt Lake was doable by morning. But something in Carla's tone made her skin prickle. What's the catch? She asked. No catch, Carla said, too quickly. Just don't mess with the trailer. It's sealed, and the client's real particular. Just drive. Ellie frowned, tapping her fingers on the steering wheel. She needed the money. Her truck's transmission was acting up, and repairs weren't cheap. Fine, she said. Text me the details. The details came through. A refrigerated trailer, sealed with a heavy-duty padlock, loaded with perishable goods. The pickup was at a warehouse just outside Tonopah, a place Ellie had never heard of. The manifest was vague, no specifics on the cargo, just a weight and a destination. She started the engine, the familiar rumble of the Mack shaking off her unease. Money was money, and she wasn't one to spook easy. Highway 50 was desolate, dubbed the loneliest road in America, for a reason. No cars, no lights, just an endless stretch of asphalt flanked by sagebrush and distant mountains. Ellie's headlights cut through the dark, the only sign of life. She kept the radio off, preferring the hum of the engine. The air was chilly, even for late summer, and she zipped up her jacket as she drove. An hour in, she noticed something odd. The road signs were wrong. She passed a marker for Austin, 20 miles, but Austin was behind her, not ahead. She double-checked her map. Her phone's GPS was spotty out here, but the paper map confirmed she was headed east. She shook her head, blaming fatigue. Long hauls played tricks on the eyes. Then she heard it, a soft thud from the trailer. She froze, her hands tightening on the wheel. The sound came again, louder, like something heavy shifting inside. She glanced at the side mirror, but the trailer was just a dark shape in the night. Refrigerated trailers didn't make noises like that. Not unless the cooling unit was failing, and the gauge on her dash showed it was running fine. She turned on the CB, hoping to hear another driver, but all she got was static. She switched channels, and a faint voice broke through, garbled and low, like someone whispering through a bad connection. Ellie, it said, her name clear as a bell. She yanked the CB mic off the hook, her heart pounding. Who's this? She demanded. No answer, just more static, and then another thud from the trailer, sharp and deliberate. Chapter 2, The Warehouse. Ellie reached the warehouse in Tonopah just after 2 a.m. It was a squat, unmarked building surrounded by a chain-link fence, the kind of place that looked abandoned until you noticed the security cameras. A single floodlight buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows. She parked near the loading dock, her gut telling her to turn around and drive away, but the promise of triple pay kept her there. A man in a gray jumpsuit met her at the dock, his face half hidden under a baseball cap. He didn't introduce himself, just handed her a clipboard with the manifest and pointed to a trailer already hooked up to a dolly. That's your load, he said, his voice flat. Don't open it. Client's orders. Ellie nodded, signing the paperwork. The man watched her too closely, his eyes glinting under the cap. Drive safe, he said, and disappeared into the warehouse. She hooked the trailer to her truck, the hitch locking with a heavy clank. The trailer was cold to the touch, the metal slick with condensation. She checked the padlock. Big, industrial, no way to open it without a key. The thumping had stopped, but the air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing. She climbed into the cab and hit the road, the warehouse fading into the darkness behind her. The thudding started again 20 miles out of Tonopah, louder now, like someone was banging on the trailer's walls. Ellie's stomach churned. She tried the CB again, but the static was worse, and that voice came back, whispering her name. Ellie, Ellie. She turned the radio off, but the voice didn't stop. It was in the cab now, low and close, like someone was sitting in the passenger seat. She glanced over, nothing but her duffel bag and an empty soda can. The road signs were still wrong. Austin, 15 miles. She'd passed Austin an hour ago. She checked her odometer, 73 miles since Tonopah. She should have been closer to Ely by now, but the landscape hadn't changed. Same sagebrush, same mountains, like she was driving in circles. The thumping grew faster, and now there was a new sound. A low, wet rasp, like something breathing through a clogged pipe. She pulled over, her hands shaking. The trailer was quiet again, but the air was wrong. Too still, too cold. She grabbed her flashlight and a crowbar, ignoring Carla's warning. She wasn't driving another mile with that noise. At the trailer's rear, she shone the light on the padlock. It was intact, but the metal around it was scratched, deep gouges that hadn't been there before. She pressed her ear to the door. The rasping was louder, and now she heard words. Faint, garbled, but definitely words. Not English, something older, guttural. Her skin crawled. She backed away, the flashlight beam shaking in her hand. Something moved inside the trailer, a shadow passing across the tiny gap in the doors. It was tall, too tall, and it didn't move like a person. Ellie ran back to the cab, her boots kicking up dust. She locked the doors and floored the gas, the truck lurching forward. The thumping followed, faster, harder, like whatever was inside was angry. The CB crackled, the voice clearer now. "You can't run, Ellie," it said. "It sees you." She screamed, slamming her fist on the radio. The voice laughed, a sound like breaking bones. Chapter 3, The Endless Road. The highway stretched on, unchanging, the same sign appearing every few miles. Austin, 10 miles. Ellie's eyes burned from staring at the road, her hands numb on the wheel. The thumping was constant now, a steady beat that matched her racing heart. The rasping grew louder, and sometimes she heard her name in it, woven into the guttural words. Ellie, Ellie. Her phone was dead, the screen black no matter how many times she pressed the power button. The GPS was useless, stuck on a blank map. She tried to call Carla on the CB, but all she got was static and that voice, taunting her. "It's hungry," it said. "It knows you." She ripped the CB's cord out, but the voice kept going, echoing in her head. The trailer felt heavier, dragging the truck like it was carrying a mountain. She checked the gauges, fuel was low, too low for the distance she'd driven. She should have needed a fill-up by now, but there were no gas stations, no truck stops, just the same stretch of highway looping endlessly. The mountains in the distance never got closer, and the sagebrush looked identical, like a stage set on repeat. Around 4 a.m., she saw something on the road, a figure, standing in the middle of the lane. She slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding. It was tall, thin, with arms too long for its body, its head tilted at a wrong angle. Its eyes glowed, faint and yellow, like a coyote's, but bigger. Ellie froze, her breath fogging the windshield. The figure didn't move, just stared, its head twitching slightly. She hit the gas, swerving around it. The figure didn't chase her, but as she looked in the side mirror, she saw more of them, dozens, lining the road, their glowing eyes watching her pass. The thumping in the trailer was deafening now, and the rasping turned into a growl, low and hungry. The trailer shook, the hitch creaking like it might snap. She saw a light ahead, a truck stop, its neon sign flickering open 24/7. She pulled in, her tires screeching. The lot was empty except for a single rig, an old Freightliner with no plates. The diner was lit, but the windows were dirty, the light inside dim and yellow. She grabbed her crowbar and ran inside, shouting for help. A lone waitress stood behind the counter, her back to Ellie. "You gotta help me," Ellie said, her voice shaking. "There's something in my trailer." The waitress didn't turn around, just kept wiping the counter with a rag. "You shouldn't have taken it," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. Ellie's blood ran cold. "What?" The waitress turned, and her face was wrong, pale, almost translucent, with eyes too big, like the thing on the road. "It's awake now," she said, pointing at the window. Ellie spun around. The trailer was blacker than the night, its doors open, swinging slightly. Something moved inside, a shadow that didn't match the light. Ellie ran for the door, but when she reached the lot, the Freightliner was gone. and the diner's lights were off, the windows boarded up like it had been abandoned for years. Chapter 4. The Thing in the Dark. Ellie approached the trailer, crowbar in hand, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. The growling was louder, mixed with a scraping sound, like claws on metal. She shone her flashlight inside. The trailer was empty, but the walls were covered in scratches, deep and jagged, like something had been clawing at them for hours. At the far end, the shadow was there, tall, thin, its head wrong, its eyes glowing like embers. She slammed the doors shut and ran to the cab. The engine sputtered, like something was draining the battery. She floored it, the truck lurching forward, but the growling followed, now coming from under the cab, like whatever was in the trailer had crawled beneath the truck. She swerved, trying to shake it, but the sound stayed with her, louder, closer. The CB crackled. "You can't hide, Ellie," the voice said, mocking now. "It's part of you." The growling turned into words. Her name, her ex-husband's name, her mother's name, people she hadn't thought of in years. The voice knew things it shouldn't, things she'd buried deep. She screamed, her voice raw, as the trailer shook violently, like something was throwing itself against the walls. The road signs were gone now, the highway a black tunnel with no end. The figures were back, closer, their long arms reaching for the truck. Ellie pushed the Mac to its limit, the engine screaming. The fuel gauge was stuck, the needle frozen at a quarter tank. The growling was deafening, and now she felt it, vibrations under her seat, like something was clawing at the cab's floor. She saw a town ahead, a faint glow of lights. She pushed the truck harder, the speedometer pegged at 85. The town was small, just a gas station and a motel, but it was real. She pulled into the motel lot, her hands shaking so badly she could barely turn off the ignition. The trailer was silent, but the air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. The motel clerk, an old man with a scarred face, barely looked at her as she checked in. "Room 6, he said, sliding a key across the counter. She asked if he'd heard anything weird on the highway. He just stared at her, his eyes cold. "Don't open that trailer," he said. "Some things don't like the light." Chapter 5. The Motel. Ellie didn't sleep. She sat on the motel bed, crowbar across her lap, staring at the window. The trailer was parked outside, under a flickering streetlight, but the light didn't touch it. It was like the trailer was a void, swallowing everything around it. Around 3 a.m., she heard the growling again, right outside the window. She pulled the curtain back. The trailer doors were open, and the thing was standing there, its glowing eyes fixed on her, its head twitching. She didn't scream. She just watched as it raised a long, bony arm and pointed at her. The window cracked, a spiderweb of fractures spreading across the glass. Ellie grabbed her keys and ran to the truck, not looking back. She drove, the trailer shaking so hard it felt like it might break apart. The growling was everywhere now, in the cab, in her head, chanting her name. The highway was a nightmare, the figures running alongside the truck, their arms stretching impossibly long. The CB was a chorus of voices, screaming, whispering, laughing. "You took it, Ellie," they said. "You let it out." She didn't know what they meant, but the words cut deep, like they were pulling something out of her. Chapter 6. The Final Drop. The glow of Salt Lake City appeared through the darkness, a faint promise of safety. Ellie pushed the truck to 90, the engine screaming, the trailer rocking like it was alive. The figures were everywhere now, their glowing eyes filling the mirrors, their arms clawing at the cab. The growling was a roar, and the trailer felt like it was dragging 1,000 tons. She reached the warehouse just before dawn, her hands trembling so badly she could barely park. The trailer was silent, the doors still shut. The warehouse manager, a wiry woman with a clipboard, didn't ask questions. "Leave it and go," she said, her voice clipped. Ellie didn't argue. She unhitched the trailer and drove away, the Mac feeling light without the load. She never called Carla again. She never took another job. The voices didn't stop, though. Every night, in her apartment, she heard the growling, faint but there. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those eyes glowing in the dark. Months later, she heard a story from another trucker. The trailer was still in that warehouse, untouched, unopened. Workers said it hummed at night, and sometimes the doors moved on their own. Ellie sold her truck, burned the manifest, and moved to a new state. But she still checks her mirrors, even in her car, waiting for those eyes to appear. And sometimes, in the quiet, she hears her name, whispered in the dark.
The Midnight Hall. The highway was a dark, endless line cutting through the pine forests of northern Maine. No moon, no stars, just a heavy blackness that seemed to swallow everything. Jack Mercer, a trucker with 15 years on the road, gripped the wheel of his old Freightliner, the engine's low rumble the only sound breaking the silence. He was hauling a refrigerated trailer full of frozen meat to a warehouse in Bangor, a last-minute job he'd picked up for extra cash. The dashboard clock read 1:47 a.m. He was behind schedule. Jack wasn't a superstitious guy. He'd driven every kind of road, from desert to mountain, and never bought into the ghost stories truckers swapped at diners. But something about this run felt off. The dispatcher had been vague, muttering about a special delivery and warning Jack not to open the trailer, no matter what. "Just drive," the guy had said, his voice tight. Jack shrugged it off. Money was money. The road was empty, not a single car for miles. His headlights barely cut through the fog that had rolled in, thick and gray, curling like smoke. He turned up the radio to shake the unease, but all he got was static. He flipped through stations, nothing but white noise. Annoyed, he switched it off. That's when he heard it, a faint thump from the trailer. He froze, glancing at the side mirror. The trailer was a shadowy bulk behind him, its reflective strips glinting weakly. Probably just the load shifting, he told himself. Frozen meat didn't thump, though. He turned the heat down in the cab, straining to listen. Silence. Then, another thump, louder, deliberate, like something heavy hitting the trailer's wall. Jack's stomach twisted. He'd hauled everything from cattle to car parts, and he knew how a rig sounded when the load was loose. This wasn't that. This was intentional. He pulled over onto the shoulder, the gravel crunching under his tires. He sat there, engine idling, staring at the mirror. The fog seemed thicker now, pressing against the truck like it was trying to get in. He grabbed his flashlight and a crowbar from under the seat, more for comfort than anything else. The dispatcher's warning echoed in his head, "Don't open the trailer," but he wasn't about to drive another 100 miles with something banging around back there. He stepped out into the cold, the air sharp and damp. The forest was silent, no crickets, no wind, just a heavy stillness that made his boots sound too loud on the pavement. At the trailer's rear, he hesitated. The doors were sealed with a padlock, standard for a high-value load. He shone the flashlight on it, half expecting to see it tampered with, but it was intact. Another thump came from inside, so loud it made him jump. It wasn't random, it sounded like a fist pounding, slow and steady. He backed up a step, his breath clouding in the chilly air. "Who's there?" he called, his voice swallowed by the fog. No answer, just another thump, then a scrape, like something dragging across the trailer's floor. His mind raced. Stowaway? Animal? But how? The trailer was refrigerated, set to 20 below. Nothing could survive that. He should have gotten back in the cab and driven on. But Jack was stubborn, and curiosity had always been his weakness. He pulled a bolt cutter from his toolbox and snapped the padlock. The click echoed like a gunshot. He grabbed the handle, heart pounding, and yanked the door open. A blast of freezing air hit him, carrying the sharp smell of blood and metal. The flashlight beam swept the trailer's interior, revealing rows of frozen beef slabs hanging from hooks. But at the far end, something moved, a shape too tall, too thin to be human, crouched in the shadows. Its eyes caught the light, glowing like a cat's, but wrong, too big, too bright. It let out a low, guttural sound, not quite a growl, more like a word Jack couldn't understand. He stumbled back, the crowbar slipping from his hand. The thing didn't move, just watched him, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Then, slowly, it raised a long, bony arm and pointed at him. The trailer doors slammed shut on their own, the sound deafening. Jack ran for the cab, his boots slipping on the wet pavement. He climbed in, locked the doors, and floored the gas, the truck lurching forward. The banging started again, faster now, like a drumbeat from hell. It wasn't just one thump anymore, it was dozens, coming from all sides of the trailer. Jack's eyes flicked to the mirrors, but the fog was too thick to see anything. The speedometer climbed, 60, 70, 80, but the banging kept pace, relentless. His hands shook on the wheel, sweat stinging his eyes despite the cold. Then, the CB radio crackled to life. No static, just a voice, low, raspy, like it was coming from inside the cab. "You opened it," it said. Jack's blood ran cold. He hadn't touched the CB. "You shouldn't have opened it." The voice wasn't human, it was too deep, too hollow, like it was coming from somewhere far away and far too close at the same time. He yanked the CB's cord from the dash, but the voice kept going. "It's awake now." The banging stopped, replaced by a new sound, scratching, like claws on metal, getting louder, closer. Jack glanced at the passenger seat, half expecting to see that thing sitting there, but it was empty. The scratching was coming from under the truck. He pushed the rig to its limit, the engine screaming. A sign for a truck stop flashed by, 10 miles. If he could make it there, he'd be around people, lights, safety. But the scratching grew frantic, and now he heard something else, a whisper, faint but clear, repeating his name. Jack. Jack. It wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was in his head. The truck stop's neon glow finally appeared through the fog. Jack pulled in, tires screeching, and stumbled out of the cab, shouting for help. A couple of truckers playing cards in the diner ran over, but when they checked the trailer, it was empty. No meat, no hooks, no thing with glowing eyes. Just a cold, clean box, like it had never been loaded. The other drivers thought Jack was drunk or crazy, but he knew what he'd seen. He never drove that route again. The dispatcher vanished, no record of him at the company. The job wasn't in their system either. But sometimes, late at night, Jack still hears that voice on his CB, even though he ripped it out years ago. "You opened it," it says. And sometimes, in the dark, he sees those eyes in his rearview mirror, waiting. The Hollow Route. Chapter 1, The Last Minute Job. The dashboard clock flickered to 1:22 a.m., its pale blue light casting shadows across the cab of Rosa Delgado's Freightliner. The Arizona desert stretched out beyond the windshield, a vast sea of sand and scrub under a starless sky. Rosa, a 40-year-old trucker with short black hair and a silver cross necklace, sipped lukewarm coffee from a travel mug. She'd been driving for 14 years, hauling freight from coast to coast, and prided herself on never turning down a job. Tonight, she was on a run from Tucson to Albuquerque, a last-minute gig her dispatcher, Luis, had practically begged her to take. "Rosa, it's good money," Luis had said over the phone, his voice edgy. "Pick up a trailer in Casa Grande, drop it in Albuquerque by sunrise. Client's paying triple, but you gotta move fast." Rosa didn't like the sound of it. Luis was usually calm, even when things went wrong, but triple pay was a lifeline. Her mom's medical bills were stacking up, and the truck needed new tires. "What's the load?" she asked. "Specialty cargo," Luis said, dodging the question. "Sealed trailer, no peeking. Just drive, okay? No stops." Rosa frowned but agreed. She wasn't one to spook easy, but Luis's tone stuck with her, like he was scared of something he wouldn't name. The manifest was waiting at the pickup, a single-page listing, sensitive materials, with no details. She hit the road, the desert swallowing her headlights. Highway 10 was dead quiet, not a car in sight. The air was heavy, the kind of still that made your skin itch. Rosa kept the radio off, the hum of the engine her only company. The trailer was a standard box, no logos, just a plain gray shell with a heavy padlock. It felt too light for sensitive materials, but she didn't dwell on it. Jobs like this were weird sometimes, pharma stuff, maybe, or high-tech gear. She was 40 miles out of Casa Grande when she heard it. A soft, hollow knock from the trailer, like something tapping on the inside of a drum. She stiffened, glancing at the side mirror. The trailer was a dim shape in the dark, its edges blurred by dust. The knock came again, sharper, followed by a faint scraping, like nails on metal. Rosa's heart picked up. She'd hauled enough to know what a loose load sounded like. This wasn't it. She flicked on the CB, hoping to hear another driver, but all she got was static, thick and crackling. She switched channels, and a voice broke through, low and slow, like it was coming from far away. "Rosa," it said, her name dragging out like a sigh. She froze, her hand hovering over the mic. "Who's this?" she called. No answer, just static, and then another knock, louder, like something heavy hitting the trailer's wall. Chapter 2, The Desert Stop. Rosa pulled over at a rest area near Marana, the tires crunching on gravel. The lot was empty, just a rusted sign and a single street light flickering like it was on its last legs. She grabbed her flashlight and a tire thumper from under the seat, ignoring Luis's warning about not stopping. She wasn't driving another mile with that noise. The trailer sat silently behind the cab, its gray walls dull in the faint light. The knocking had stopped, but the air felt wrong, too thick, like it was pressing against her chest. She checked the padlock, still locked, no scratches or dents. She tapped it with the thumper, the sound echoing in the quiet. Nothing happened. She pressed her ear to the trailer door, her breath shallow. A low hum came from inside, not mechanical, but soft, like a voice caught in a throat. "Rosa," the voice whispered, not from the CB but from the trailer, like it was seeping through the metal. She stumbled back, the flashlight beam shaking. The hum grew louder, and now she heard something else. A faint scratching, like fingers dragging across the floor, slow and deliberate. She backed toward the cab, her pulse racing. The desert was silent, no wind, no animals, just that scratching, getting faster. She climbed into the cab and locked the doors, the thumper still in her hand. The engine roared as she pulled back onto the highway, the trailer dragging behind her. The knocking started again, harder, like something was pounding on the walls. The CB crackled, the voice back, clearer now. "You shouldn't have stopped, Rosa," it said, almost gentle. "It feels you now." Rosa yanked the CB's cord from the dash, but the voice didn't stop. It was in the cab, low and close, like someone was sitting next to her. She glanced at the passenger seat, empty, just her jacket and a water bottle. The knocking turned into a thud, heavy and rhythmic, like footsteps pacing inside the trailer. She pushed the truck to 75, the engine groaning, but the thudding kept pace, relentless. The road signs were wrong. She passed a marker for Marana, 10 miles, but she'd just left Marana. She checked her map, her phone was dead, no signal, no GPS. The highway looked the same, endless desert on both sides, but the mile markers were looping, like she was trapped in a circle. The thudding grew louder, and now there was a new sound, a low, wet hiss, like something breathing through a flooded pipe. Chapter 3, The Phantom Lights. Around 3 a.m., Rosa saw lights in her side mirror, faint at first, then closer, too close. A vehicle, big and dark, no markings, riding her tail. She flashed her lights, signaling for it to back off, but it stayed glued to her bumper, its headlights a sickly yellow, like old bulbs. She sped up to 80, but the vehicle kept pace, its engine a low growl that vibrated through the cab. The CB crackled, even though it was unplugged. "You can't run, Rosa," the voice said, laughing now, a sound like dry leaves crunching. The dark vehicle honked, a deep, guttural blast that rattled her bones. Rosa's hands shook as she gripped the wheel. She floored the gas, pushing the Freightliner to its limit, but the vehicle stayed with her, its headlights blinding in the mirrors. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone, no lights, no sound, just the empty road behind her. Her heart pounded, her breath coming in gasps. The thudding in the trailer was faster now, like whatever was inside was agitated. The hissing grew louder, and now she heard words in it, her name, over and over, mixed with sounds she couldn't make out. She saw a truck stop ahead, its sign flickering open 24 hours. She pulled in, tires screeching, and parked under a dim floodlight. The lot was empty except for a single rig, an old Volvo with no plates, its windows dark. The diner was open, but the lights were low, the air stale. Rosa ran inside, clutching the thumper. A lone waitress stood behind the counter, wiping a glass with a rag. "You gotta help me," Rosa said, her voice trembling. "There's something in my trailer." The waitress didn't look up, just kept wiping. "You shouldn't have taken that load," she said, her voice flat. Rosa's stomach dropped. "What do you know?" The waitress turned, and her face was wrong, pale, almost translucent, with eyes too big, like they were sinking into her skull. "It's awake now," she said, pointing at the window. Rosa spun around. The trailer was darker than the night, its doors open, swinging slightly. Something moved inside, a shadow that was too tall, too thin. She ran for the door, but when she reached the lot, the Volvo was gone, and the diner's lights were off, the windows boarded up like it had been abandoned for years. Chapter 4, The Thing in the Shadows. Rosa approached the trailer, thumper in hand, her pulse hammering. The hissing was louder, mixed with a scraping sound, like claws on metal. She shone her flashlight inside. The trailer was empty, but the walls were covered in scratches, deep and jagged, like something had been clawing at them for hours. At the far end, the shadow was there, tall, thin, its head bent at a wrong angle, its eyes glowing like embers in a fire. She slammed the doors shut and ran to the cab. The engine sputtered, like something was draining the battery. She floored it, the truck lurching forward, but the hissing followed, now coming from under the cab, like whatever was in the trailer had crawled beneath the truck. She swerved, trying to shake it, but the sound stayed with her, louder, closer. The CB crackled. "You can't hide, Rosa," the voice said, mocking now. "It's part of you." The hissing turned into words, her name, her mom's name, her brother's name, people she hadn't spoken to in years. The voice knew things it shouldn't, things she'd kept buried. She screamed, her voice raw, as the trailer shook violently, like something was throwing itself against the walls. The road signs were gone, the highway a black tunnel with no end. The dark vehicle was back, its yellow headlights filling the mirrors, its grille inches from her bumper. Rosa pushed the Freightliner to 85, the engine screaming, but the vehicle stayed with her, its horn blasting like a scream. Then it vanished again, leaving only darkness behind. Chapter 5, The Motel Haven. Rosa saw a motel ahead, its sign flickering vacancy. She pulled in, her hands shaking so badly she could barely park. The trailer was silent, but the air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. The motel was small, just a row of rooms and a tiny office. The clerk, an old man with a lazy eye, handed her a key. "Room 4, he said, not looking up. She asked if he'd seen a dark vehicle on the highway. He just shook his head. "Don't go near that trailer," he said. "Some things don't like the light." Rosa didn't sleep. She sat on the motel bed, thumper across her lap, staring at the window. The trailer was parked outside, under a flickering streetlight, but the light didn't touch it. It was like the trailer was a void, swallowing the glow. Around 3 a.m., she heard the hissing again, right outside the window. She pulled the curtain back. The trailer doors were open, and the thing was standing there, its glowing eyes fixed on her, its head twitching. She didn't scream. She just watched as it raised a long, bony arm and pointed at her. The window cracked, a spiderweb of fractures spreading across the glass. Rosa grabbed her keys and ran to the truck, not looking back. She drove, the trailer shaking so hard it felt like it might break apart. The hissing was everywhere now, in the cab, in her head, chanting her name. Chapter 6, The Final Delivery. The highway was a nightmare, the dark vehicle appearing and vanishing, its headlights blinding, its horn a scream in the dark. The figures were back, lining the road, their glowing eyes watching, their arms reaching. The CB was a chorus of voices, screaming, whispering, laughing. "You took it, Rosa," they said. "You let it out." She didn't know what they meant, but the words cut deep, like they were pulling something out of her. The glow of Albuquerque appeared through the darkness, a faint promise of safety. Rosa pushed the truck to 90, the engine screaming, the trailer rocking like it was alive. The figures were everywhere, their arms clawing at the cab. The hissing was a roar, and the trailer felt like it was dragging 1,000 tons. She reached the warehouse just before dawn, her hands trembling so badly she could barely park. The trailer was silent, the doors still shut. The warehouse manager, a short woman with a clipboard, didn't ask questions. "Leave it and go," she said, her voice clipped. Rosa unhitched the trailer and drove away, the Freightliner feeling light without the load. She never called Luis again. She never took another job. The voices didn't stop, though. Every night, in her apartment, she heard the hissing, faint but there. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those eyes, glowing in the dark. Months later, she heard a story from another trucker. The trailer was still in that warehouse, untouched, unopened. Workers said it hummed at night, and sometimes, the doors moved on their own. Rosa sold her truck, burned the manifest, and moved to a new state. But she still checks her mirrors, even in her car, waiting for those eyes to appear. And sometimes, in the quiet, she hears her name, whispered in the dark.